Now this is a strange one. Let me start at the high level. In the mid-80s, SWAT was a brand new concept. It was a group set up by the LAPD to deal with extreme situations. A better equipped, more militarized version of the police. It rapidly spread from LA, and it also quickly stopped being used for things like hostage crises, and wound up getting used for things like storming the wrong address in the middle of the night because someone was suspected to be growing a pot plant. As for this game, the title screen indicates that the copyright is owned by Oki Hajime. He was a minor comics artist, but I can't find any trace of SWAT being a comic. My best guess is that it was a concept Hajime was shopping around. Toei picked it up to use as a video game, but nothing else materialized from the project. The box and ads have the only Hajime SWAT art I can find. And then there's the game. It's one of the strangest mashups I've encountered, and in Japan it's only remembered for being unplayably broken. The story is that a terrorist group have seized a building and taken dozens of hostages. As the captain of the 5-man SWAT team, you have to clear the building floor by floor, eliminating all of the terrorists and rescuing all of the hostages. And you have a 24-hour time limit to do it in. After you hit start and enter a name, your first task is to decide how you're going to breach the building. Storm the front door, breach the emergency exit, or slip in the tradesman's entrance. There's no guards on that last option, so that's the one you want to use. Once in the building, it's a first-person maze. You can search the hallways, eliminating terrorists one by one. There's also an adventure game-style menu that you'll use. From top to bottom, the options are Look Around, which you use to spot terrorists that are in cover. Examine, which you use when you come across something peculiar. Listen, which you use to detect nearby terrorists and hostages. The confusing Remove, which does not remove your equipment, it removes traps and other equipment that you come across. Open is actually a little bit tricky. When you select that, you're given 3 options of how you want to breach a room. You can rush in. You could throw a smoke grenade, which lets you close in with the terrorists, but it can also affect elderly hostages. Or you can throw in a hand grenade, which is its own set of problems. Continuing down the menu, there's Use, where you pull out a tool. That's used for applying first aid, or radioing in when you think you've cleared all the terrorists on a floor. Arms, which lets you choose how everyone is going to be equipped. Form is for formation, and it brings up a chart where you can determine where everyone stands in the group. If you know you're about to storm a room full of terrorists, then you might place everybody forward. But usually when you're in uncertain territory, you want everyone at the cardinal points so that there's someone watching in all directions. Finally, Para stands for Parameter, and that's how you check the status of all of your team members. All that said, the bulk of what you're going to be doing in the game is combat. And the combat system is slow, clunky, unintuitive, and all around not fun. You have to give commands to all 5 members of your squad in turn. So let's walk through a basic one. You want to attack the bad guy. Step 1, select attack. Step 2, decide how you're going to attack. Close range, long range, or use your special ability. Let's say you want to get close. Okay, now you have to decide if you're going to rush them, or you're going to sneak up on them. Sneaking is only useful if the terrorist's back is turned to you. That chosen, are you going to stab them, or are you going to garrote them? Now, do you want to do that to their body, their head, or their legs? Finally, you have to confirm that everything you entered was correct. Or do you want to try to re-enter things? There's no way to go back if you hit the wrong thing. You have to progress to the end of the menu and then say you want to redo it. And that is the command for one character. Now do that 4 more times. When combat begins, you can see how many terrorists you're dealing with, and you're told at what range they are. Then you go into the menu where you can start selecting commands. The first command is attack, and I've already walked you through that. The second command is covering fire. Anyone who shoots and misses is vulnerable to a counterattack. and you can use covering fire to prevent that. Going through that, you have to choose what weapon you want to use, and then where you're aiming at the person. Before I go on, I need to mention, the weapon abbreviations don't make a whole lot of sense. You'll probably understand SMG right off the top of your head, but HG is handgun, not hand grenade. Hand grenades are HB, and if you throw one at enemies who are too close to you, you wind up hurting the squad. The third option is to defend yourself. Straight from the manual, the only reason to ever use this is if someone's too wounded to fight. Then if you press B, you go to a second page of that top menu. There you can select to use something. Again, this will mostly be first aid kits. You can get the status of the character, because why would you want that on the screen while you're choosing actions? The final option is to automatically run the fight for you. Again, that's an option you'll probably never want to select. When you hit terrorists, eventually they'll fall down. If you hit them again while they're down, they'll likely be killed. But if they're still down at the end of the round, then you'll have an opportunity to interrogate them after the fight. In those instances, you go to this menu. Talking is only for hostages. For terrorists, you have to choose to interrogate them. And then you're given the option to beat them to make them talk, or you could just hear them out. When you think you've gotten all of the terrorists on the floor, you can radio in and get permission to go on to the next floor. The radio is also how you get your password, and that's where the problem is. You see, passwords you get on the first floor are fine. Passwords you get on the second floor and further up, those get to be a little bit trickier. The game will randomly exclude characters from those passwords. And if that happens, obviously your password won't work. That bug is the only thing that SWAT is remembered for. SWAT is a game that demonstrates how complexity doesn't guarantee quality. I can't think of another Famicom game that has as complicated combat mechanics, unless we're counting something like Koei's strategy games. What we find in SWAT is that even though it is complex, none of it's interesting. The choices aren't really meaningful. There isn't a really clear connection between your actions and what happens. And it's terrible at providing you with information that you need to know, like the status of your squad. It feels like Shoei Systems tossed every idea they thought was cool into the game, without building a solid foundation for the game to begin with. And the result is something that's way more likely to irritate you than entertain you.